This is the Michael Brian Show. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. And today I'm joined with Rennie Saunders and Aaron Bolzle, who are the founder and president of Shut Up and Write, which essentially helps writers write and finish books and any other projects that they are working on. So anything from offline events to online events to workshops, you name it, that is what they do. So Rennie, Aaron, thanks so much for being a guest on the show.
Thanks, Michael. I'm really happy to be here. This is Rennie.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
Now, I hear you have an exciting and interesting story as to how you two actually connected, how you two met, and how you two started Shut Up and Write. So, share a bit about that for us. Give people some context for the conversation today.
Great. Well, I'll start off with that because I started Shut Up and Write back in 2007 after I moved to San Francisco, and I've been a technical and marketing writer for years, and had an opportunity to start expanding my creative writing. So I spent a lot of time studying, reading books, going to workshops, and did this, that, and the other, and thought, wow, these are all great, except they start too far into the process. What I need is a way to actually get my writing done. And so I started a meetup chapter called Shut Up and Write in a little coffee shop in San Francisco here. And within a couple of months, I had dozens of people coming because what we did was people go, are we going to have writing prompts? Are we going to share at the end? I'm like, no writing prompts, no sharing. You come in, you write what you need to write. We'll talk for a few minutes, and that's it. And the simplicity of that really resonated. And I've been able to watch. So now we've been doing this for 15 years. And Aaron came in about 5 years ago, I believe, when we realized we wanted to expand and make it available for more people. So that's sort of the easy genesis.
So I was living across the street from Rennie, and I had moved to San Francisco from New York to work for Apple iTunes. And I had an amazing experience working at Apple, but I decided to move on and become a consultant of my own. And Rennie was, again, a friend next door, and he said, hey, so you're doing this consulting thing. Do you mind coming and consulting a little bit on this project that I had? And funny enough, I had learned just very little about the program because we had just been friends and not really talked about work very much. And what I saw was something that was really, really amazing, which was just, as Rennie says, a very simple model that was very applicable to one of the most ubiquitous forms of creativity in the world, which I think is writing. And at that time, I think, Rennie, you said we had about 10 to 15 different groups across the world that were writing. And about 10,000 people were a part of that group at that time. Is that correct?
Yeah, somewhere around. I was actually, I'm going to give myself a little more credit. It was about 14,000 at that point.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, give yourself all the credit. And we started working together about building a model that would kind of create the most inclusive writing community that we could possibly imagine. And so I worked with the team as a consultant to help them put together a strategy for the next few years on how to grow. And I think yesterday we just had our 375th chapter open up in Hong Kong, and we are in 54 countries and have over 100,000 members worldwide. And so we've seen exponential growth, and we've seen a significant amount of growth over the last few years during the pandemic with people connecting online. But the great thing to me was that we were just friends that were living next door to each other. Typical big city experience, you see each other and you wave, but you never really get to know each other. And the first time that we really got a chance to get to know each other, I found out that his cousin, who was raised almost like a sibling with him, actually owned the restaurant right around the corner from where I lived in Tulsa,
Wow.
Oklahoma, who my family had, patroned for decades. And so, it's just a very small world. And as we've continued to work on this project, we've realized how small that world is with every new connection and interaction.
So it must be a bit of a surreal thing when you go from pandemic community building to trying to see if that'll carry over when you reopen up offline, which is what you used to do pre-pandemic. How have you navigated the community building element? Because it seemed like it was one of your cornerstones before the pandemic started, and yet it seems like it's an exponential growth over these past couple of years. What do you put that down to? Do you put it down to online actually being transferring nicely into offline? Like, how do you see the community growth aspect?
One of the things that I think is most amazing about how our lives have changed during the pandemic is that so many people found time that they didn't have before. We spent so much time commuting back and forth from our jobs or focusing on different components of living out in the world that people found themselves with far more time. And many, many people chose to use those times in creative ways and get into projects that they had always promised themselves they would do. And many of them decided to use programs that are tried and true, that maybe are that you pay for. The greatest thing about the shut up and write model is that it plays well with pretty much any other program or strategy that's out there. It is not rocket science. If you dedicate time to honing your craft or whatever you want to get accomplished every single week, you're going to accomplish it more quickly. And the easiest way to ensure that you are dedicating time is by having accountability. And that accountability through community is what Shut Up and Write is all about. If you go to a gym and you have two mates that are waiting for you, you know that you are far more likely to show up than if you're doing it on your own. And that's exactly what Shut Up and Write is about. It's about stop talking about the project that you have to do, get together with people who want to support you in that process, and shut up and write. Now, as we transition after the pandemic, I do think that we're in this really interesting phase where people are shifting the way that they are using their time. But what we see is that these individuals have already created habits, and those habits are carrying over, and they are continuing to keep space for that writing. So what's happening is those individuals that were meeting online are now choosing to meet in person and online. And they're doubling down on the efforts that they were taking on their project. They want to go in person and meet with people within their community to write, but at the same time, they've built those close relationships with that same group that they've been working with online, and they don't want to leave that as well. So our hope is that exponential growth is going to continue to continue to move forward, and that those people who have prioritize the things that they care about can continue to push forward on their creative efforts, even as we all come back into the quote real world.
It makes me think actually of myself many years ago, and also people that always talk about the novel that they're writing. The amount of conversations that you have with authors that may have written the first paragraph of their book, and it gives them an icebreaker in conversations. It makes them seem cool to their friends, but they've never actually put pen to paper or started typing the keys. Is that where Shut Up and Write came from, Rennie? Is that like, okay, loads of people talk about writing a book, but so many less people actually start writing it?
Yeah, you've sort of hit the nail right on the head. And with myself, I have been doing creative writing since I was in grade school, and it's something I've always done. And I've actually written things. I haven't published anything, but I had written piles of things, but they didn't have an organization to them, and there would be huge gaps. And so, in my research of how to get writing done, I kept coming back to the great writers saying, like Isaac Asimov is one of my favorite. Is like, the only way to do it is butt in chair. And so I took those different aphorisms from the great writers and tested them all out. I spent about 2 years trying different things. And even once we started Shut Up and Write with the group that showed up, we really tested different methodologies to go, what gets people to go, I've got this idea, and we can go, okay, if you are getting your writing done at least an hour a week, this is what we found. Let me back that up. If you are committing to an hour a week and you're actually doing it, then that other talking and writing time is when you're processing the novel. You get past that first paragraph, as you said, right? And so both in my own experience, and I've seen it in now hundreds and hundreds of people who have finished their work, because the basic commitment of just showing up and actually writing is the weirdest thing. I'll tell you a quick story. A lot of people come up to me, oh, you help writing. How do I get published? I'm like, well, that's a really good idea. Is your manuscript all finished? Have you gone through editing and all of that? And they're like, well, I don't have a manuscript. I'm like, well, how's the draft coming? They're like, well, I don't have a draft yet. I'm like, okay, there's your problem. Let's sit down. Let's make a commitment, find your group, and write for an hour a week. And then we'll talk about how to get published.
So I think one of the most amazing aspects of Shut Up and Write is how inclusive it is to everybody, no matter where they are in the writing stage. You meet people all the time that say, I would love to be able to write a novel. I would love to write creatively. I'd love to do poetry. And I think that there is this concept that people are born with specific gifts. And if you were not born with that gift, then chances are you need to find your gift somewhere else. And the reality is, I think hopefully most people know this, is that if you're passionate about honing that gift and you spend that time on it, you will see results. And so Shut Up and Write is not about just ensuring that writers who have been writing for a long time are more prolific in their writing. It's about helping those individuals who have always wanted to write a story, who love the idea of writing a memoir to leave for their kids and their grandkids, for people who know that they have writing to do for their job, and it's one of the most difficult things for them to get accomplished, and we're going to help them do it more quickly. So that is, to me, the most exciting component of this, is that it really is simply a mechanism to help individuals at any of the stages that you can imagine start or finish whatever project they have in their mind.
It actually makes me think of the two real Stephen Pressfield books that I've ever read. And the first one being, I think it's The War of Art, I think, was one of them. And then Turning Pro, I think, was another. And I think he talks a lot about if it's bad writing or good writing, they both involve writing, and they both involve you showing up, and they both involve you actually doing it. And then it was a Seth Godin interview as well, where he said the journey to good writing tends to start off with bad writing. You've got to get through the bad writing to find the good writing. And I think it all speaks to two core things, which I think I'd love for you to elaborate on. The first one is commitment, as you mentioned before, but then also the ability to be self-accountable. I don't think you could really write for anybody else per se, unless you've got publishers and deadlines and they give you enough of a carrot and a stick to get you on the chair. But I think you need to be very self-driven. You need to be self-accountable. You need to be the kind of person that would beat yourself up a little bit if you didn't sit down and write the book. If you rely on other people to do that, it's going to be difficult a lot of the time. So speak to commitment and your ability to be accountable to yourself.
I will speak about commitment. Let me back up first, though, and mention that I have everyone in the organization, on our team, anyone who comes within about 10 feet of me, I get as close to mandatory as I'll get with anything, which is you have to read The War of Art. So much of Shut Up and Write is built around the concept of resistance. Stephen Pressfield calls it resistance. And that core idea just drove me. So shout out to Stephen Pressfield. I read his newsletter every week. And I actually saw Seth Godin talk when I was in the early stages of this and had a chance to chat with him for a couple of minutes. And he helped me focus that. I said a couple of things, and I won't get into that now. But so just so you know, both of those people influenced how we structured Shut Up and Write and the simplicity of it. So with commitment, the building of a habit is frequently seen as something really difficult. And in my own habit building practices, what I've learned from other people is there are two stages to it. There's intention and then there's action. And so when we're doing the Shut Up and Write an event, the three of us have now showed up. We're getting ready to do it. This is how it goes. I say, hi, everyone. My name's Rennie, and for the next hour, I'm going to be working on my science fiction novel. What are you going to be writing? And that's how long it is, right? We don't talk about it. We don't do anything, but I've made the intention out loud to my group of accountability buddies that I'm going to write my science fiction novel for an hour. And then I write my science fiction novel for an hour. And at the end, I say, I wrote, and it went pretty well. It was painful. It was great. I had characters do weird things, but we went from intention to action. And if we do that an hour a week, you start seeing the benefits of your commitment. Oh, I committed to writing an hour a week. I did it for a year, and I said, I'm not going to do anything else. Suddenly you have the rough draft of a novel, 52 weeks of about 1,000, an average of 1,000 words a week. That's 50 some odd thousand words, give or take, right? So the commitment, we want to say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym every week and I'm going to do this thing. There are two things missing there. The action, finding someone who's going to look you back and go, okay, you're going to go to the gym. I got a better idea. I'll go with you. Right. So we've set up this commitment structure, again, going back to the way Aaron said it, which is it's an accountability. It's the lowest level of accountability that we could find.
And I think that it is really, really, you said something that I think is very important, which is you think in order to be successful, you need to be self-accountable. You need to be somebody who beats yourself up if you haven't done that. But I also think that takes habit building, that it takes time, and that takes commitment. And sometimes it's not something that that is innate to you, and having other individuals that can set you on that path will ultimately lead to you being an individual that's self-accountable. Hopefully you don't have to beat yourself up about it because you've found such a good cadence that it's something that you just naturally do now without much pushback. But I think that's an important thing. I have a lot of lofty goals in life, and there are a lot of things that I can innately do. And there are a lot of things that I don't innately do that I still find extraordinarily valuable. And I think having those accountability, that the accountability through community helps me ensure that I am making time for that and then move towards finding that self-accountability. You know, we were talking a little bit earlier about personal trainers, and I truly believe that leveraging a personal trainer is one of the best things that you can do for your physical health. I think that combining that with other individuals who are working out with you at the same time, that are at different stages, that are providing that same level of commitment, just adds an additional accountability to that. So we don't offer the personal trainer. We offer the buddies that are going with you, and we allow you to bring your own process, bring your own maybe tools that you're using in order to get things accomplished. And we truly just focus on ensuring that you know that there are individuals that are intentional about writing, who want to help you stay intentional about writing. And we found that that's extraordinarily beneficial to a lot of people.
I would like to address one more thing on that as far as commitment. One of the things in habit building, in doing this, particularly around writing, that writing is essential to organizing our thinking about anything. You start out saying, oh, I want to write a novel. And so you start making that weekly commitment, and you showing up, and then you realize you're actually spending time in your week, that it carries over. Organizing your thinking, organizing your time. Once you start organizing a writing project, you realize, wow, this works really well for writing. I'm going to bring that to how I approach my job. My job starts going better. We've seen this again. I've led over 500 of these events through the years, and just the stories of people going, yeah, I had a scientist showing up on a weekly basis just to do her lab notes, got that so organized that she started writing a novel, right? So it's that commitment. It starts really simple, but it will spread to the different parts of your life if you give it that room.
I think as well that actually speaks to whether the book becomes commercial or something that people would sell or something that sticks with them as a hobby, something that benefits them in other ways other than I'm going to sell this thing when I've written it. The amount of people that write for therapy, they write for organization, they write for some kind of cathartic experience, like a diary of some kind. There's lots of different reasons why people would write that doesn't just stop at I'm going to write a book and sell it. Is that the kind of thing that we're talking about as well?
Absolutely. That is exactly what we're talking about. I think, when you ask people what they like to do and they say, oh, I love to take long walks, nobody asks, are you any good at it? Right? Like the fact that you enjoy doing it doesn't mean that it has to be for a end product. It just means that it's something that you want to do. And the simple act of doing it can bring a lot of joy and a lot of catharsis. And I think that is an extraordinarily important thing to remember as we are personally trying to connect with as many people who want to write. So we're not an ecosystem built for writers. We're an ecosystem built to help every person tell their story, whatever that story may be.
I think of, and this again goes to my upbringing of standing around on the front porch, just talking story, and having traveled a bit, through Europe and Southeast Asia, that everyone stands around and talks story. It's just what humans do. We are storytellers. It's how we organize our life. It's how we organize our society. And we all have stories running through our heads. What we're doing is saying, write that down. Because even if you don't become the next Stephen King, you will have begun to tell your story, and the what you do with that, it becomes a completely different conversation, but you will get further along in that story by writing it down.
I wonder if that is one of the main reasons why people do it, and it's almost like a societal issue, for want of a better expression, whereby we typically do things that are monetizable. That we can't seem to do anything anymore just for the fun of it. And I think sometimes creativity can be killed when it has to be monetized. I can't speak to everybody, but a lot of my hobbies became businesses and I hated them when they become businesses. A lot of the ventures that I wanted to do for fun realized that, hey, I've actually got to monetize it to be able to keep doing it. I then suddenly lost the motivation because it became tainted, or whatever word you want to describe it, because there had to be some kind of financial gain. And I think over the years, I've been quite fortunate in that I've managed to detach the creative from the monetary. Not many people have that ability, but I'm one of the lucky few. And I think that when society's driven by, you're typically happier if you make up to a certain amount of money. How you make it is becoming more important now. Like how you make your money is becoming more important. Do you not find though that that's encouraging people to be creative, but coming at it from the wrong side? And they're coming at it from the money side first because it's about how they make their money. They've got to do what they enjoy. But is that not causing people to come at their creative side from a different angle, do you think? Do you think more people should just be creative for the heck of it?
Um, that's a really deep conversation, and I'll try and condense it a little bit in that I'm doing what I love, and I'm lucky in that I come from the graphic design world. I was a graphic designer for many years, a creative director, and I still do it, even though I don't do it for money anymore because I get to. Um, I love making art, and the fact that I was selling it to people, I'm lucky in that way. So the creative, if you're doing what you love, I mean, if truth be told, I love Shut Up and Write. I love what we're doing. We've built this amazing thing, but I'm watching people on the internet make money being Dungeons and Dragons dungeon masters, and I'm jealous because I love playing D&D.
Yeah.
But I'm not at the point where I could get paid for it, right? So, but that doesn't keep me from not doing it. I still run a game. I've got a group, right? So it's the same thing. Creativity, we see it as this thing outside. The thing I believe is that you should, if you want to be paid for it, you should. And it's a larger conversation about if that you shouldn't have to be really good at business to, you should be able to write and sell that if you want to. But I don't think there should be a disconnect. If you're a marketing manager, if you're a tool and die manufacturer, bring your creativity to it. Why not? We're tool makers.
I think people interchange words pretty frequently between creativity, craft, and art. And I think there are three distinct elements. I resonate very much with what you're talking about, Michael, about like using your craft and then or your art and for pay, and then kind of losing the passion behind it. I went to school for music, and then I worked at a large record label in New York, and kind of seeing how the quote unquote sausage was made definitely kind of tainted some of the perspectives that I had at being a musician. But creativity to me is absolute king. I think as we as a society evolves from rewarding individuals who have the knowledge to those who know how to access the knowledge and implement that knowledge in creative ways, I think creativity is going to continue to be the most important component. And within our organization, we're a nonprofit, and our focus is on empowering individuals through critical thought and critical thought through teaching creative writing. And I think that's a very important thing to denote. But creativity is different from craft, which is different from art. What you choose to be your art, I think, should never have a monetary focus to it. How you use your craft to make money, I think, is a very important thing, but everything we do should have creativity involved in it.
I think that it says a lot about a lot of people just need a hobby, don't they? I know it sounds a bit simplistic and it sounds a bit daft, but I think more people need to have something that they do just because they want to. And if it's writing, if it's video, if it's podcasts like this one, having the ability or the freedom of expression or whatever it is you want to call it, to be able to say, right, I'm going to do this thing purely because I want to. And it makes me feel good to keep my creative juices flowing, keeps my brain working, keeps my body moving, and I will benefit because of it. I will benefit in that way because I'm able to sit down and do this thing. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think in some ways we're kind of pushed down the money road quite early on. And for people that don't excel necessarily in academia or career based, if someone's in this crossroads in life where they're unsure what to do with the rest of their life, they get pushed into, but you need to live, you need to survive, you need to earn your way, otherwise you can't buy anything, you can't live, you can't do anything. And I think if you're in that crossroads and you don't necessarily have anything apart from what you would do for fun, what you would do to be creative, what you would do as a hobby, it's almost a way of like, what else have you got left? What else can you do that you're good at other than what you used to do for purely creative reasons? And I think it's a tough decision for a lot of people when they have to choose between things they do just for fun and then things they can also sustain themselves on. And it's like, what would you rather have? Would you rather have something that you just did for fun, or something that you did for fun and something that you could sustain yourself from? Which, going off what you two have said there, that purely speaks to your abilities, doesn't it? Just speaks to how good you are at the thing. Because if you do it just for fun, you don't really need to be fantastic at it. You might be phenomenal, but you can just do it and it's fine, it's great. But I think in order to turn it into something that's sellable, other people have to want the thing as well.
And I think that's the important part, and that is even separate from the craft and the art. That's the marketability of whatever you're creating, which is a completely different separate conversation. I really do love what you were saying though about just the desire for people to create. I think we are all looking for a sense of identity and what we believe is a life well lived. And I'm going to quote a book from 1989. A great guy named Ray Oldenburg wrote a book called The Great Good Place. And he talks about the concept of a third place. And in the third place, we have historically in society had three places. We have work, we have home, and then we have a place that we contribute to, but we're not directly responsible for. And that's where a lot of individuals had their identity. That is everything from a beer garden, a public house, the central square, an alumni association, a cookbook club, a bowling league, you name it. And to a large extent, we've lost that in our society, and we are struggling to try to find where that can be. A lot of companies have talked about culture. Large companies talk about the culture that you can have by being a part of them, kind of supplanting that third place, and people find themselves spending all of their time either with family or work, and they feel empty and they're expecting too much from both. I think that creative endeavors, especially creative endeavors that allow you to engage and connect with others who are focused on that same intentionality, provide a really healthy sense of identity that a lot of other people are trying to find through politics or through sports or through social media platforms where they just sit and complain about everything that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. It doesn't help when a lot of the things that we want to do for ourselves, it's almost like it contradicts what you've been told. You do things for fun, but you've been told you need to do X, Y, and Z when you want to do something completely different. And I think it's living in that contradiction a little bit, living with that conflict is easier for some people than others. Like, I love the fact that I'm able to do what I love to do, and that I'm able to get by financially, live the way that I want to live, doing something else. And
Right.
it gives me the creative freedom to sit down and go, you know what? Not a lot has to come from this, but it's great and I love it, and I'm able to put my everything into it because I don't have the worry of paying my bills or where the next meal is going to come from or any number of things. So I think it adds an extra layer for people, that some people can be creative no matter what. Some people need to have the mental space to be able to have the creative thinking. And I think depending on how you're wired will depend on which way you're able to come at it. Like people like myself, and I would like to think you two as well, is that you could be creative no matter what happens in other areas of your life, because creative is such a big passion for the pair of you that doesn't really matter what happens, you can always then step into your creativity and do the thing that you like doing most, which is writing or possibly D&D. Who knows, Rennie?
It's hard because our societies are fairly expensive, and you need to pull your own weight to some extent. And so creativity, because the way we've structured our society doesn't put enough value, unless your paintings are going to sell for $30,000 a piece, you're a struggling artist, right? Unless you've landed that contract with Hachette or Tor Books, you're just at this other end. And it's important to remember that most people, or I would add to this conversation, that most people go through 4 careers in modern Western and in most global societies. You'll start out, maybe you're a cook for a couple of years, and then you get out of that and you are a musician or people go through changes, and creativity comes in when you allow yourself to say, I'm going to do this thing. It will help organize me and new things will come out of it. I'll meet people. That third place that Aaron speaks of is so important. And there's this whole thing going on in the media these days about quiet quitting, because people are showing up to work, doing their work, and going to the third place. And companies got used to people staying around all day and working till 10 at night and eating at the commissary. And suddenly they want to go be in a bowling league, go, do something creative or something with friends. And it's throwing things off. And we say, great, go be part of your community.
And that's the kind of opportunity that I think we have as Shut Up and Write. We've seen a lot of people through, as Rennie was saying, the quiet quitting and the great resignation, find a lot more balance in their life, and they are spending more time trying to connect and engage with others outside of their work. A lot of them are doing that through social media, and I think it's not an unfair statement to say that a lot of the times it's a very unhealthy environment. I was watching actually a TikTok, I'm guilty, the other day, of a creator talking about how it's just simply not natural to be swiping and feel happy, swiping, feel sad, swipe, feel angry. You go through all of these different emotions over and over again as consuming content, and what that has to do to our foundation. With Shut Up and Write and the online engagement that we've seen over the last few years, what we're trying to do and what we're working to develop and to launch is a platform that allows people to connect based off of intentionality. So not common interest, but intentionality. When you bring people together based off of intentionality, the whole focus of connecting is supporting each other in what they're trying to accomplish, instead of sitting around and talking about the things that they're passionate about, which ultimately leads to positive and negative roller coaster rides of interaction. We found that the ecosystem that we've developed has been, we like to call, the most wholesome corner of the internet, because everybody who's coming on has a shared expectation that the people that they're going to engage with have the same desire to accomplish personal goals and the same desire to support the other person in accomplishing their personal goals. And so we don't see a lot of the same kind of trolling that you see within other social platforms. And with the platform that we're building and we're launching soon, the hope is that that's just going to continue to grow and continue to support those types of individuals. And so I really do think that we're at a precipice of how people leverage the internet. Like we have to accept, even for those individuals who are listening to this that were born with the internet in their pocket, we are still extraordinarily young in understanding how to leverage this tool, and the evolution of the internet is continuing to go. For myself, when I first got access to Facebook, it was so cool to connect with that person that I knew from second grade. But now I don't think that is that unique to a lot of individuals. And so the ubiquity of everything, everywhere, all of the time, that is quoted by Bo Burnham, is really, I think, going to be short-lived. And the focus is going to be far more on finding individuals that are interested in connecting on intentionality. And the hope for us is that leads to more creativity, more honing of craft, and then ultimately more art.
Out of curiosity as well, what is the intentionality behind Shut Up and Write? And also, how do you organize that? How do you allow people in? What kind of system have you set up whereby intentionality can be, let's say, the focus, and then after that, everything else is fine because the intentionality is there? How do you enable that system to actually take place?
It's off of the carrot that we use to attract individuals. To use I'm based in Oklahoma, right? Like, I'll use an Oklahoma term. Like, you have to know what kind of lure you're using for what kind of fish you're trying to catch. We're not interested in marketing to every single person in the world. We're interested in connecting with individuals that are attracted to the idea of finding support through community accountability. And those individuals tend to be people who want to protect the ecosystem that we're building. And so I think that's how we do it. And the way that we are developing the tool sets within the platform are ways to support and celebrate the creations that those individuals are making, and only providing critique in structured ways when it's asked for and by individuals who have proven themselves to be capable of providing professional critique.
That would make sense in a way because you almost get what you incentivize, don't you? So if you add enough incentives to the right things, you encourage behavior in that direction. So if you incentivize people to say, I don't know, similar to a lot of people sharing, let's say on Duolingo, where you have your number of days that you've been on the app and you've been using it to learn your language. You've got this like day streak of I've used the app for 10 minutes today. That'll go on my 200-day forever streak of learning this app. And I get the sneaking suspicion that that is a way of incentivizing people to use the app all the time, would be an incentive to write all the time if they had this daily streak that they might get a special badge for when they hit 100 and 200 and all those things, because that's an incentive to encourage people to do it. They're more likely to get people to try and get as high a number as possible. Similar with Shut Up and Write as well, is that you want people to sit down and write something, anything really, every week. And I guess having that built into the system means if you don't like that, then you don't have to stay, if that makes sense. So it's like you create the ecosystem, and if people don't like it, they're not going to want to come along.
Let me address it real quick. I just want to say that we want to. I'm going to go back to the environment, which is I have discovered in my life from social media that I want an hour, and I can say I'm going there to write, but I'm there with some non-toxic people who care about the fact that I'm writing. That alone, in a week of craziness, I have an hour with people that I have a base level of respect for, who I want to see do well, who want to see me do well. That completely translates into the rest of my week and how I treat everyone else.
And that base level of respect, in my opinion, is cemented in the intentionality of why we're there. And that to me is really the common connector in all of this.
So it's almost like the intentionality causes these ripple effects, these consequences, in order to get along, in order for the system to work, you've got to play by these rules almost that you've built incentives around. So it's almost like the rule is no negativity. Okay, that's in the background. That's something you might have in the back of your mind, but to have that as the result further on downstream, you have to incentivize the opposite. So you incentivize support, and that way you prevent the negativity from happening. You haven't got to tell people, by the way, no negativity in these parts. You incentivize the opposite so that you never get what you don't want, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, writing is one of the most ubiquitous creative endeavors in the world. So many people leverage the craft of writing for multiple different purposes. So we are in no shortage of customers. There are plenty of people out there that we can attract. And so it does us so much good to isolate those individuals who are attracted by the rules or the requirements that we're providing. And those requirements are, to me, not very high. They are common decency and support for each other. Again, I think that we as a society have latched on to these online platforms as voices for us and ways for us to potentially push for specific changes. And what I think we're trying to do is attract individuals who are not focused on that when they are with us. They are focused on just the endeavors and the changes that they're looking for within themselves and supporting others in that shared goal, and hoping and celebrating the accomplishments, because it's not about, yay, you got published, right? We talk, I think a lot of the times too, we want to come at, I said carrot earlier, there's carrot and stick. We come at problems with a stick, trying to de-incentivize. But if we incentivize with the carrot, we create that environment that I think is really wholesome. And by celebrating the small wins of, I had a really great writing session, I'm going to sit down and continue to write, even if you guys are going to leave. And that's an important thing to say, right? Rennie didn't come and just write for an hour when he started this. He started with an hour, but after the hour was done, a lot of times people are like, you know what? I'm on a roll. I'm going to keep on writing. You guys have a great one. And people will write for hours and get far more accomplished than they ever expected.
What I'd really love to know as well, if you're able to share, is when Rennie mentioned other people were caring about what he was writing. I would love to hear a little bit of an elaboration on that, and also how do you have that happen as the result of the community? Because I get the intentionality, it works great, but then there'll be people out there that might just turn up, write, go home. But there are people out there that are committed enough to your project as well, that they're committed enough to care about it. They're committed enough to make sure that you're doing your thing because they want to see it happen. They want to see it bear fruit, or whatever the term is. How do you encourage caring in a community? Because from a 35,000-foot view, I think we need a bit more of this outside of Shut Up and Write as well.
Well, and that right there is the secret sauce, is that people want, they want to feel safe. So to nurture creativity, you have to do it in somewhat of a safe space. You can do it in your garage, in the back, the door's closed, and you're flinging paint all over like Jackson Pollock. But where do you get your inspiration? Who are the people that are going to refill your tank? As it says in the 7 Habits, how are you sharpening your saw? And so we've combined that in the sense that not only are we sharpening the saw, at the same time we're practicing our craft. You come and you sit in that, and there's nothing quite like experiencing it. And I've seen this hundreds and hundreds of times. We do a session and people have been there the first time, and they kind of lean back when we're doing the check-in, and they look around and they go, that was kind of an amazing experience. And then they come back the second time, and then the third time, and then they go, oh, people were nice to me when I showed up. I didn't have to explain all the weird stuff going on in my life. We just wrote for a little while. We chatted about the writing process, and that simpleness, there's literally a thing that changes in you when you can show up and sit down with a group of people who are happy to see you for no other reason than that you're there. You get some work done, and then you're like, wow, that's how you do it. We don't do anything other than just be simply nice to each other for an hour and a half, right? It's a crazy thought, I know, but
it is in this day and age for sure. Definitely. I think we can't devalue it enough, I think. And what really spoke to me as well, Rennie, is how it's the kindness that breeds the safe space. Because if you can be kind, you create the safe space, because you know it's not going to fall on angry ears or frustrated ears. It's always going to fall on kind ears. And I think that the ability to do that is something that is a bit of a skill, really. Like, you have to be the kind of person that can do this.
I apologize. It is a skill, and there's because I went to art school, we have tried at different points, and this may show up in the future, how to teach people to do critique. We're all critics now. It's like the latest Marvel movie, the latest this, that, and the other. We're all instant critics, but very few people have developed the craft of critique, and critique is much different. There's no ad hominem in it. There's no, it has nothing to do with the artist. It has everything to do with the art. And that is something we learn. Aaron had something I wanted to.
Well, I'm a big believer that that most things happen top down. I think that the culture that we're building, that kind, creative, safe space, really is something that is a reflection of how Rennie does everything. And I don't want to put him on the spot, but he has created that kind of space for us as employees that are pushing this initiative forward. And in everything that we do, we are given the freedom to be kind. That is not only a good thing, it's an expectation. And because of that, that filters down to all of the individuals that are volunteering to support us put these initiatives together. And so I don't want to undervalue the fact that Rennie's intentionality behind creating that kind, safe space has a ripple effect that can literally affect hundreds of thousands of individuals in the way that they spend an hour every week. And so, as Rennie says, as those people come with that intentionality of being kind and in creating that safe space and supporting each other in their desire to accomplish goals, nobody feels a scarcity mindset when people find success. It's just like if you were to go with your best friends to the gym and somebody had a goal accomplished, you wouldn't sit there and feel like they took something away from you. You would sit there and celebrate the fact that you were potentially a part of this ecosystem that allowed this person to succeed in something that they'd always wanted to do. And I really do, I've been lucky enough to work in a lot of organizations, and I think it is unrealistic to believe that we can create safe, healthy spaces when the people at the top are not ensuring that they are creating those safe, healthy spaces for the people who are trying to create those safe, healthy spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the top-down element of things as well. And then as leaders of the meetups and get-togethers and workshops and creative spaces that you guys have, you have to be able to create the space as well, which is very easy if you're in that space, as you said, from the top down. If Rennie creates that space, you're more likely to create that space for others because you come at it from that angle as well. So it makes everything easier.
Let's go back. We were discussing briefly before we came on Clubhouse and how this idea that people could get on, and by the time they got on, they were just yelling. There's an intrinsic part of that to this, which is everyone wants to be heard. We're all talking story, right? And you're like, you want to be part of that story. So, and this is sort of by accident, but we've built on it, which is by having you show up into a safe, creative space and letting you write for an hour without any expectation of readback. So you can write whatever you want. You're effectively journaling, even if it's a novel or a dissertation, whatever it is. You've been heard. Everyone celebrated the fact that you sat down and you wrote for an hour, and you didn't put it out. You put it out into the universe without having any kind of blowback whatsoever, right?
It makes me think as well that it's worth knowing what your writing practices are as well, if you have them. I know you use the shut up and write model, I think, unless not, I guess we'll find out. But what are your writing practices? What do you do with your time? If you're going, right, I'm going to do some writing today, what does that look like? Do you set it up the night before? Do you have morning routines to get yourself ready? What's your writing practice like? We'll start with whoever wants to go first.
Let me tell you, I'm the storyteller, right? So about 2.5 years ago, we're in the middle of all of this. The pandemic is raging. We don't have vaccines yet. We're all locked in our houses, and I'm getting lots done. We're getting lots of things done. But then I went, okay, I've gotten most of this stuff handled. I need to get some writing done. And I went 3 full days before I remembered that I had actually started Shut Up and Write to get my own writing done. So it was, and I say that with a sense of like, it's true because I have been so in the weeds. And so the way I set it, there are lots of things that go into how I set up my creative process, and they're particular to me. I like, what's his name? Oh gosh, the author who wrote James and the Giant Peach. and those great books, and I'll remember it in a moment. He said, he gave writing advice in the back of his book. He said, you absolutely must get up at 8 o'clock, and you absolutely must have a cup of orange juice and a cup of coffee, and you absolutely must write from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. unless you're not me.
Funny.
It's in the back of one of his books. And so what I do is I make sure that I have a task list and I do all the high value things out of the way before I can do that. That's what I have to do, because I'm a clean the dishes before I cook kind of person, right? So, but I also, the most important, I'm going to bring this back around, I put it on my calendar. I know exactly when I'm going to write at a minimum once a week. With me, I'm writing 5 days a week. I allow myself to write if I want to on the weekends, but I know what time I'm going to write every day, because my shut up and write practice has advanced to the point where I have that one where I'm getting together with people, but even if I can't get together on a session because it doesn't quite work, I can't get to one online, or I can't get to my group in the city here, I drop everything and I walk over and I sit down and I say, hi, my name's Rennie. I'm going to be working on my science fiction novel, and I write for an hour, right? Even if I'm just talking to the room, because I've developed that habit, because my commitment has gone from once a week to something that really makes my entire being just relax.
So you say the intro that you would say if it was a group, even if you're in the room by yourself?
I always make intention.
One of the things that I've learned from Rennie during this entire process is to silence the critic as you're writing. One of the most difficult things for me, having gone to music school, as you can imagine, I'm used to being good at certain things. And when I'm not good, and writing is not something that I feel like has been an innate gift and something that I've had to cultivate. A lot of times I get discouraged by the words that are coming down on the page. And what Rennie's strategy has really helped me just not worry about what's coming out. Just get it down. There's another day and there's another time to rewrite this. But the more and more I do that, the more and more confident I am at my ability to write down my ideas without feeling like it's a representation of who I am or where I am at that moment. And then later on, I find out that a lot of the stuff was not as bad as I thought it was. And on top of it, there's a lot to work with. It's almost like taking a picture and immediately going, oh, that's a horrible picture of me. But then 5 years later, you look back and you're like, oh, wow, I was actually not bad looking back then.
And it's important that the part of this process, and why you go for the ugly first draft, you just write. There's a lot to the method where we say, don't read back. When you sit down to write, read back one paragraph and then start writing again. Don't come up with names. You get to a character name, you put brackets, write name, and keep going. You say city and keep going, because we wanted world build. We want to, what did this character do? But you have to, this is the craft part. You have to train yourself to write, and you have to stop editing while you write. You have to stop critiquing while you write, because guess what? That's not your creative brain. If you're editing and critiquing while you're writing, you're trying to have an editor and a painter in your head at the same time. And your brain can be trained to go, I'm creative. And then the next day you pick it up and go, now it's editing time. And you go at it with critical function.
I like that. I like how it becomes a skill to be able to just write. And then afterwards, if you want to do anything else with it other than just write it, then it's worth going back and doing the editing after the fact. I think that's something that you might even encourage as part of your system as well, because not everyone's going to make it sellable. Not everyone's going to market it or sell it or any of those things. So in a way, it's because of that, the editing could even be done outside of those sessions, i.e. you go, it's the time to write, not the time to edit. You turn up and you write. If you want to edit, you edit on your own time.
Right. Or if you go every day, maybe you pick, and I say that because we have people that go to Shut Up and Writes online every single day. We have people that do 2-hour sessions that they're running that other people show up to. It's we have a great synergy with NaNoWriMo, because NaNoWriMo says take the National Novel Writing Month of November and put 30 to 50, you want to get 50,000 words on the page. You obviously have no time for editing. So we've seen over the years, because we're both out of San Francisco, that a lot of people show up in December, January, and February to take sections of it and rewrite it. Take sections and rewrite. There's a large process to writing, and people go, oh, I'm just going to write the novel. There's actually a bunch of different steps, and you have to divide each of them from each other. And that is part of the method. We won't get too far into that, but I did want to put that out there.
It's okay. I mean, we can cover it in passing if you want to, because it makes me feel like you're only using one part of your decision making or thought process at one time. So you're not trying to do
Right.
5 things at once. And
Right.
I found in the projects that I've worked on that I think is it called deep work or something,
Yeah.
where you just
Deep work.
do one thing for a long period of time, completely finish it, and then you go back and you sort of do something else for
Absolutely.
as deep as possible.
I apologize. I'm tricking people into learning deep work. So yeah, so you have ideation. You've got that idea that you've been thinking about. You've got the talk it out part. You've got the sit down and draft it, and that's where Shut Up and Write sits. Then you have the someone looks at it, makes comments, you talk about it, you rewrite it, you get it to some form, you have someone edit it, then you rewrite it, then you edit it, then you rewrite it, then you polish it, and then someone snaps it up because it's the next great American novel or the great, Irish epic poem, and you they publish it, and then you market it, and all of those are completely different processes.
Have you ever had anyone turn up to your sessions that has made quite a name for themselves? Obviously, it's kind of 6 to 7 figure community that you have. I am hoping we may be able to talk about this person or persons, if they do exist, that has made quite a name for themselves in the writing space.
I'm sure. Well, I don't know anybody big. I keep mentioning Stephen King, hoping that he'll show up and write with us someday.
You never know.
No, I'm just kidding. But my regular group on Monday evenings had two people. Well, so I had a large group of people over time. Two people in particular. One had written, I think, 14 or 15 books at that point, and made it an essential part of her writing practice to work each week in a group, because writing is isolating, right? If you write a lot. And so this was her moment to socialize. She'd chat for a little bit before, get her just power through her writing, sit and chat for 15 to 20 minutes and take off. And this was socializing, right? There was another member who was a journalist who wrote constantly, and we probably would have heard of her, but I haven't talked with her, so I won't mention that. So large people, yes, please. I don't know.
Yeah, anecdotally, we've heard of multiple different individuals that have participated in Shut Up and Write. As you can imagine, that's not always the brand that a famous author potentially wants to put on themselves. That potentially they found themselves in situations where they need support to get their writing done. But I will say that when I was in London in April at the London Book Fair, we met with multiple publishers who were looking at ways that they could leverage Shut Up and Write relationship to get their authors to finish their books. Because as you can imagine, as a publisher, so much of their time is spent managing their authors and ensuring that their authors are delivering on time. And it is not rare that an author might find themselves in a slump and need support. And so while we're not at liberty to share or know of the specific authors, we do know that the industry in itself is very excited about how they can leverage Shut Up and Write as a way to continue to support their authors and getting their work accomplished. And I think that that's a big thing to talk about, is as you create this as writing as an industry, right, as you have responsibilities to deliver, right, there are deadlines, but there are also deadlines in other ways, right? We have a lot of people who are writing their dissertations, who are writing their essays, who are journalists who need to get their project done by a specific deadline, that leverage our community as a way for them to accomplish it more quickly. I mean, for me, sometimes I'll leverage a Shut Up and Write simply to write that email that I knew was going to take an hour, and I was really, really not looking forward to writing it. But I know that I have that time during that week that I'm going to go ahead and dig in. Because today it's so easy to get distracted by so many different things. And I think that we as a culture value volume over potential difficulty. So if I can take care of 5 tasks or write that one email, I'm always going to focus on those 5 tasks. So sometimes it's just really nice to have that period of time to write that email that you've been ignoring for the last 2 weeks.
I was actually going to ask you about how you integrate into the industry, and knowing that you've got poets, you've got dissertations, you've got authors, you've got journalists, you've got a lot of different industries that you can cross over into. Is that something you see in the future? I mean, probably worth having Rennie chime in on that one, being the founder, but is that something that you consider? Is that something that you've thought about? And where do you see Shut Up and Write in the future?
Uh, sure. I'll go back to what we were talking about around careers, which is do the thing that's in front of you, which is helping people write, and then seeing what comes of it. Right? We can't know. It is, we are building our new platform and the way we go about our business in a way that can be emergent, so that we're taking care of our business. We're showing up every day, working on the platform, getting our writing done, doing our things, knowing that that there are hundreds of thousands of people aching to be heard. How do we fit into that? We'll see. We'll see over the next year or two. What do you think, Aaron?
So, our goal at this point is to create the most inclusive writing community in the world based off of intentionality. We do have relationships within the industry to provide professional services to those individuals every step of the way. So our main focus is not on ensuring that every writer who comes through our program has the opportunity to get published. It is ensuring that everyone has access to the tools that they need to keep their writing moving forward. And sometimes that is a manuscript evaluation. Sometimes that's a copywriter. Sometimes that's a cover art creator. There's 1,000 different components to the writing process that I think are important for people to consider, and we will provide pathways to that. And so our hope, again, as a nonprofit ecosystem, is that we want to ensure that we are creating a space where everybody has whatever they need in order to sit down, shut up, and write. And that can include publishing services. So I think you'll see, as we continue to evolve and grow as an ecosystem, that we really are focused on ensuring that every single person that has a story to tell has the means to tell that story to whomever they want to share it with.
Well, everyone listening, I'm sure, would reach out to you guys, or would like to, if they're writing, if they're struggling with their writing, or they just want a safe space to be creative. Where can they go to find out more about you?
Shutupwrite.com.
Just that simple. How about social media? Are you two on the socials as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Shut Up and Write is on all the major socials. I'm personally on most of the major socials, and people are more than welcome to reach out to me if they're so inclined. But the ecosystem itself is really focused on shutupwrite.com or shutupandwrite.com. We just find that and to be makes that a little bit longer. But people are more than welcome to come and join the community as it stands. Meetup.com is also a really great way for people to find existing ecosystems, but they can find that from shutupwrite.com. We'll link you directly to the community that's potentially happening in your area. If there isn't an event that's happening in your area, we welcome anybody to become their own host, and then that gets them the ability to pick their own place and their own time that works best for them to host an event. And if somebody lives in a community where potentially it isn't the best thing in the world to be out and about these days, we are encouraging people to go out and about if they can, because it helps support the coffee shops and the other centers. There are employees that need business, and we're trying to encourage people out. But if there's a reason why you can't, our online community is continuing to grow, and you can find a time pretty much that works for anyone just by going to shutupwrite.com.
Thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Those that are listening, feel free to subscribe, share the show, tell others, and also leave a review wherever you are listening into your podcasts. Rennie and Aaron, thanks so much for being a guest on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Really appreciate the time. It has been a good conversation.
Thanks so much.
If you want to join a group of like-minded people that are all out to achieve their goals, their dreams, their aspirations, and they get the help and support from me and the other members, then my inner circle is for you. There's a link in the description for this episode to get 2 months free of the inner circle. So you set your membership up, you get 2 months free access. Hopefully I'll see you there, and I look forward to helping you on your journey of achieving the life that you want.